The hearing was so much fun and so interesting that everybody wants to keep talking. Is that it?
Why don't we get started now? Mr. Brennan is convening the second portion of the hearing. As the first testifier prepares.
Communication workers, please, we are on our way. Communication workers of America. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being patient. I appreciate that. And why don't you identify yourselves and let us know what you are up to here.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I want to express my appreciation to Chair James Brenner and to Chair Robin Schimminger for scheduling this very important hearing. Did I pronounce your name right?
You pronounced my name perfectly, and I thank you very much. It's the first time it's ever happened. However, for my friend Jim,
whose
name is Jim Brennan, you said Brenner, so.
Oh.
But
I'm very embarrassed.
It's okay.
What a terrible way to begin.
I didn't mind.
What a terrible way to begin. My name is Debbie Goldman, and I am with the Communication Workers of America. And with me is a real expert that has spent 25 years as an outside plant technician for Verizon. She's now retired, Patty Fritz. And as you can see in the room, very patiently, we have dozens of experts who are familiar from working on the front lines with the situation of the plant that Verizon is providing to customers, both the high-speed all-fiber networks, the state of the copper plant, the state of the customer service, et cetera. There is an advantage of going at this point after we've had the opportunity to hear from people from the companies, after we've had the opportunity to hear from the Public Service Commission, and that is that I hope that the information that I provide to you, which is very data-driven, will correct some of the misinformation that has been provided earlier. As you are getting As you're getting the testimony that we submitted, it includes 5 different appendices of analyses of the, unfortunately, minimal data that is available. But what the analyses that we have done show very deeply troubling trends that we want to point out to you. I am not going to read my 10-page testimony. I shortened it, and I hope that it will keep everybody's attention.
It's a bit of a disappointment, but...
But if not, I want to let everybody know that you should stay awake because there's actually going to be a slideshow.
Okay.
So pictures are worth 1,000 words, and I think the very few pictures that we've picked out from literally hundreds that we could have shown you will graphically demonstrate the situation that customers throughout this state have to deal with Verizon. I want to emphasize 2 points in my summarized testimony. First, competition is not working to bring affordable, quality cable, broadband, and telephone service to all New Yorkers. To be sure, where Verizon has chosen to deploy its all-fiber Fios network, consumers benefit from competitive choice. But throughout much of the state, millions of New Yorkers are left on the wrong side of the digital divide. And I want to emphasize, they want speed. They are choosing options that give them speed. You heard from the Frontier person who said that when the option is from the limited speeds that Frontier might provide over their copper network, people are very price sensitive. But in fact, if you look at the statistics in New York and nationally, people are going to the provider that provides them the highest option of speed. People want their video, their data, their pictures two-way, and they want speed. They want affordability, but they want speed. The fact that the upstate cities and communities do not have a meaningful...
I'm sorry, Ms. Goldman. You're going to do your testimony first and then the slideshow?
Correct.
Okay, fine. All right.
Do not have a meaningful choice of wired broadband providers, and that Verizon has failed to meet its franchise commitment to build Fios throughout New York City, as you heard. demonstrates that market forces alone will not drive companies to invest in high-speed networks in all regions of the state and to all communities. The fact, as documented in the New York Department of Public Service report, that 4 million New Yorkers are using broadband at speeds of less than 3 megabits per second, speeds that do not meet the FCC's definition of broadband, which is 25 megs downstream, is powerful evidence that something is seriously wrong, and we heard that throughout the day from your colleagues. The fact that 4 million New Yorkers remain dependent on a voice network that is crumbling, as we shall show you, before our very eyes is a policy failure. My second main point. It is long past time for the New York Public Service Commission to conduct a thorough review of its deregulatory policy failures over the past 20 years. More than a year ago, the Connect New York Coalition of labor and consumer groups filed a formal petition asking the PSC to initiate such an evidentiary proceeding, one that would produce the kind of data that you have been asking to see all along, and we know is available. For Verizon to sit there and say they don't know how many customers subscribe to their fiber network, and a few minutes later to say, but I'll show you the map, they just are not making the data available, and an evidentiary hearing would show that. The PSC to date has not acted on the petition, and it is long past time to do so. The reality is that the upstate cities, as well as the town of Brookhaven and Long Island, are currently the subject of cable monopolies, the dominant provider of broadband. The Charter Time Warner cable deal stands to improve broadband network access and speed, assuming the terms of the agreement hold and are enforced. However, the fundamental dynamic remains. The new entity will have no real competition where Verizon has not built its all-fiber Fios network. As for the $17.7 billion Altice purchase of Cablevision, CWA strongly opposes the deal as currently proposed. Altice has a business model, and we've studied what they've done in France and in Portugal and elsewhere, and it's based on cutting jobs and customer service to pay the mammoth debt that it incurs in swallowing new acquisitions. In Cablevision's case, the Altice deal will more than double Cablevision's already heavy debt load. Altice has promised Wall Street it will cut $1 billion, not the $900 million you heard. You have to add the CapEx cuts. Over $1 billion will be the cuts. How do you operate the same company and provide the kind of quality service that customers deserve and upgrade the network and reach out to those who aren't receiving it, when at the same time, in order to offset an increase in $1 billion of debt, you're going to be doing $1 billion in cuts? This deal, as currently structured, is not in the public interest. And despite the explosion in wireless, and I must say I did appreciate all today, there was an implicit understanding that wireline broadband that wireless is not a substitute for wireline broadband. Yes, we all love our smartphones, but you can't do homework, you can't apply for a job, you can't apply for government benefits over a smartphone. We need wired broadband, high speed, affordable, and without those data caps that make wireless so expensive. So let me be clear as I proceed. CWA has been absolutely clear that we want Verizon to invest in the expansion of its world-class all-fiber Fios network. And for many years, we have been part of community coalitions that have been saying, we want Fios, build Fios. But as you heard in the prevarication earlier, Verizon has refused. They are putting their capital in wireless. But until Verizon builds fiber in a community, it has an obligation to provide good service on its copper network. And the reality, as we will show you in the pictures, is that Verizon has refused to upgrade its copper infrastructure for years. Upgrade is probably the wrong word. It has refused to maintain, much less upgrade, its copper infrastructure for years, leaving 4 million customers subject to inadequate jerry-rigged repairs when the service goes out. Verizon has significantly reduced its frontline workforce. I think you probably all heard the snickers in the room when Verizon said that they have enough people to provide quality service. There aren't enough people in the call centers. Many of those jobs, as some of you have probably experienced, have been shipped overseas, and many of them are just not enough people. They try to get you to do things online so that you never reach a person, maybe get so frustrated that you finally just give up. And there certainly are not enough frontline technicians. Our data has that CWA represented frontline employees in the call centers, the technicians in New York, have dropped by 9,000 employees over the past 10 years. That's a 40% cut. Over the past 10 years, the PSC has abandoned its responsibility to ensure that Verizon provide good service to customers. In 2010, a year in which Verizon cleared fewer than 2% of out-of-service complaints within 24 hours, the PSC tried to mask the problem by eliminating reporting requirements for 95% of customers. Lowering the benchmarks allowed Verizon to disguise the terrible service that it provides. In response to a CWA Freedom of Information Law request, we received from the PSC a database of consumer complaints and detailed monthly Verizon service quality metrics for the period January 2012 through May of 2015, and we're now trying to get the updated data. I'm going to just summarize the results, but one of the attachments in my written testimony.
Let me ask you a quick question.
Yes.
These service quality metrics have to do with the remaining metrics where there's a report for the full service group, the full customers, out of service for more than 24 hours, trouble on the line, et cetera. Those are still reported for the full group of customers, yeah?
Let me separate those out.
Right.
Out of service cleared within 24 hours or service affecting cleared within 48 hours is only calculated for the group of what you're calling, or what are called core customers.
So it only relates to that group of 5% or whatever it is, the small
Only
group.
relates to
Okay.
if you're Lifeline, if you are elderly, or if you are disabled. And that's about 5% of the copper customers. The other 95% are not included. And we would add, I think sitting here today, when we heard Verizon or the PSC talk about that, in fact, the service quality measures apply regardless of technology, I am not aware that Verizon is required, even for core customers or anybody, to report this kind of data by technology. I believe they only report it for their copper customers, which is where the most significant problems are, to be sure. Now, in terms of trouble reporting, the trouble reporting is for all of the wire centers, but it is aggregated in such a way that what used to be really significant requirements about trouble reporting have been significantly watered down. Let me go through just 4 pieces of data, and it can be confusing to tease out what really are the metrics that Verizon is required to meet. Let's start with customer complaints. Over the period we got the data, more than 10,000 consumers filed complaints with the PSC about service outages, long delays for repair and installation, and dangerous company facilities. In fact, Verizon failed to meet the PSC benchmark for consumer complaints every month between January 2012 and May 2015, the most recent data that we received, every month. Number 2, since January 2012, Verizon has missed the customer trouble report benchmark in 22 out of 41 months, a failure rate of 54%. And this is just an aggregated number. This number does not count the hundreds of times that individual central offices miss the trouble report metric. Number 3, since 2010, Verizon has only had, well, this gets to the out-of-service intervals for the core customers. Even with this watered-down metric, Verizon failed to restore service within 24 hours to its most vulnerable customers in New York City alone in 11 of the 41 months. Now, these are elderly people, people on disability, on home health monitors, who may perhaps have to call 911 or a family member or their health provider, and 1 day's delay in restoration of service can literally mean the difference between life and death. And finally, the PSC mechanism designed to correct Verizon's persistent service problems is not working. In the old days, there was what you heard earlier is in this Time Warner Charter agreement, a self-affecting penalty. Verizon would fail to meet a benchmark, and there would be a penalty that would be levied. Often it would be in the terms of a bill credit to the customers. In this instance, what happens is the PSC says to Verizon, you've missed your benchmark in 3 out of 5 months. Show us and they call it a service inquiry report to tell us how you're going to improve it. And Verizon files a service inquiry report. We went through the places in which they were required to do that. By the way, if you miss it in 2 out of 5 months, you don't have to file it. But in 3 out of 5 months, you do. For wholesale customers, Verizon had to file these in 27 of 30 months. These are those customers who are buying capacity or interconnecting with Verizon. Key factor in competition. For retail customers, Verizon had to file 252 of these reports in recent years. And what was most startling, in many locations, they had to file them multiple times. So you could keep filing them, it doesn't mean you're solving the problem. It's clear that this current deregulatory framework is not delivering affordable, quality service to all the people, businesses, and institutions in all the regions of New York. Market-based policies drive investment to areas with the greatest potential to generate profit. That's capitalism. But communication services are too vital for our economy and the future of our children to leave to the market alone. And that is why the Connect New York Coalition, in June of 2014, filed a petition for the PSC to undertake a formal, on-the-record evidentiary hearing on the impact of deregulatory policies on telecom across the state. The Connect New York petition raised many issues. I want to focus on a key one. Again, an issue that I believe you got, at best, disingenuous, and more accurately, probably, how do I say this gently? Inaccurate information about the profitability of Verizon New York. Now, if we had a full evidentiary hearing, if you had an investigative committee with staff who were doing discovery and reviewing the data, we would know the answer to the question, is Verizon New York profitable? They told you this morning that they'd lost over $1 billion a year and over X number of years, billions of dollars. The little bit that we can see from the public information, they file an annual report with the New York PSC with very high-level financials, and they file for the corporation with the Federal Securities and Exchange Commission. That's all the data we have. It is not enough, but it raises incredibly troubling questions. Let me just point out 3. The first, it appears that Verizon New York is loading corporate overhead and other expenses, such as marketing and customer service operations, onto New York service in order to make it appear that local service is not profitable. For example, from the New York PSC annual report, in 2014, Verizon New York
I'm sorry, where are you now?
In the written testimony,
Yeah.
Top of page.
it is, have you found the page?
Top of page 8.
Thank you. Okay. In 2014, local service comprised about 28% of Verizon New York revenues. There are three categories of, there's unregulated, there's access, and there's local service. Local service was given, the accounting showed 28% of revenues. However, local service, the regulated side, had 55% of Verizon's corporate overhead and other operating expenses. In contrast, Verizon's non-regulated segment, which would be DSL, would be FiOS, the areas where you would think Verizon, in fact, if you turn on the TV, that's where the advertising is, that only got 18% of expenses. So until we see the books, all we can say is there is something fishy that appears to be going on here. Let me turn to point 2. As further evidence, we looked at a comparison between Verizon New York revenues and operating profits as reported to the New York PSC, and the parent corporation's revenues and profits for the entire Verizon wire line. Let me be clear, I'm not talking about wireless now. They do report for their entire corporation the revenue and profits of wireline. Verizon New York represents about 14% of the Verizon wireline across its entire footprint revenue, 14% Verizon New York. If you take that 14% and say, okay, let's take that as a ballpark and take the profit that Verizon wireline earns and do simple arithmetic, profit times 14%, to see what might be a ballpark one could expect as profit at Verizon New York. One gets, in 2014, the arithmetic turns out $140 million in profit. Modest profit, but a profit. But when you open the books that Verizon provides the New York PSC, in 2014 they reported a $2.6 billion loss. Our question is then, where did this come from? Or again, is this some kind of situation where you can move money around and make it appear that New York Verizon is losing all of this money? A state with a vibrant economy, huge corporation and institutions buying services from Verizon, and where it's built FiOS getting significant penetration. Third, we didn't have a lot of discussion here by Verizon of why, or answer of why they're not expanding their FiOS build in New York. But their CEO has told Wall Street they're putting their money in wireless. That's where they see that they want to be. Now, wireless depends on wires. Once your radio signal goes to the cell tower from your cell phone, it goes into the ground and through a wire to the central office and is transmitted to wherever you want the call to go. And so Verizon Wireless subsidiary pays a certain amount to Verizon Wireline for access to the landline network. So does AT&T Mobility, so does Sprint, so does T-Mobile. 4 years ago, we could actually get data that showed that AT&T and Sprint were paying 3 times as much to Verizon Landline for access to its cell towers in New York as Verizon Wireless was paying. Now, we don't have the data to update since 4 years ago. But this is another key question. Are those people who are paying into their rates for their landline, in effect, cross-subsidizing the wireless service in a way that then Verizon can come to you and say, we need regulatory relief because we're losing money. But they may be losing money because of the way in which the corporation is allocating. All of this begs for deeper study. I have tried to say this in a way that is reasoned and based only on evidence, not on conjecture. We need to know this, and we need to have this evidentiary hearing. At this point, I want to turn our attention to pictures. It's late in the afternoon. This should wake us up. These photos document the sad state of the Verizon copper network in the field. These conditions are common throughout Verizon's non-FiOS territory, places where cable has no competitive incentive to upgrade the networks or compete on price. You'll see double poles, dangling wires and terminals, deteriorated cables, slapdash repairs, and other problems. They're the accumulation of years of hands-off, non-policy by the PSC to tolerate Verizon's neglect of its obligations. I want to underscore these pictures. We picked a dozen, and I ask your patience to wade through even those. But we could be providing you with literally thousands. So these are just a selected few from the many. Okay. And our outside plant, retired tech Patty, is the expert. She's going to just quickly walk you through them. If you have questions while she's showing them, feel free. Otherwise, we can wait till we've gone through the dozen or so.
All right.
Okay.
Okay. This picture shows a plastic tarp covering, such as this, covering exposed wires. This leaves the wires exposed to rain and animal infestation. This should have a permanent splice case on it. The cable is not attached to the strand, but is tied to the fiber optic cable above it.
This is the kind of example you will see as we go through. When you heard every time it rains, service goes out, this is exactly why. When you expose to the rain and the snow and the wind, service goes out. Then when it dries out, your request to have repair is dropped out of the system. And that's part of what happens.
This picture shows several problems. First, there is a deteriorated, shredded tarp covering exposed wires. Second, the cable and the wires on the right-hand side of the tarp are exposed to the weather. Third, the service wires that are coming out of the bag should be connected to the terminal, the little box on that pole, but they are not. Fourth, the service terminal is rusted out and likely cannot be opened. So that would be your service drop wire to your house going right into that open bag, connected to your cable pair.
In the second largest city in New York State.
This is a public safety issue. The power company and the cable company have transferred their facilities to the new pole, but Verizon has not. The only thing holding up the old pole with the Verizon equipment on it is tension. If the tension breaks, the pole will fall right into the road. There. Oh, that's a good one. Oops, sorry. This is a 3,600 pair heavy crossbox. It weighs approximately 1,000 pounds, probably a little more. That one does. The pole is too far away. The crossbox needs to be replaced and attached to the pole. This is certainly a public safety issue for the weight of that. A tree is holding the cable up. Looks like just a branch. And that is old lead cable from World War II with paper insulated wires underneath it. This is a pedestal with buried cable. It is exposed to the elements. There are cobwebs and leaves indicating that this has been exposed for a very long time, allowing water and animals in. Each little red button at the end of a wire indicates where a wire has broken or been eaten by mice. This is a cross box strapped to a pole and a post on the left with caution tape and a rope. There's no way to get into this cross box for repair. The cross box is not attached properly and is a public safety issue. And this picture shows lead cable that is over 70 years old. It's the gray sheath there. Verizon was supposed to get rid of all the lead cable over 30 years ago. The black squirrel guard that is above the lead cable should enclose it, but it doesn't. This allows squirrels to eat the lead cable, which they love, and they gnaw holes in it and allow water to enter the paper cable inside, causing outages. This picture also shows 3 terminals stuffed with service wires. The silver terminal is open. The green terminal is strapped to the pole. On the right-hand side of the pole, there is a splice case that is not closed, exposing the cable to the weather and animals. And this is an example of a double pole, which can be found throughout New York State. The power company installed a new pole and moved their equipment, but Verizon did not transfer its equipment. The old pole is tied to the new pole. There's also an unattached terminal, which can swing in the wind and break, causing a service outage. Oops. This double pole is also a public safety issue. The old pole has a cross box on it and is severed at the bottom. The cross box is very heavy weight on the pole. The cross box is tied to the post behind it and should be properly attached to the new pole. This picture shows exposed wire at an access point. The access point box is missing its door, which is why it's covered with this vinyl. There are a lot of corroded wires. The green color indicates corrosion. It is only partially covered by a tarp, exposed to rain, snow, and weather, breaks down the wires, and leads to service outages. The sheath on the cable is gone here, which exposes the wires to the weather and animals. This will lead to corrosion and service outages. Every time it rains and those wires get wet, you have a good chance of being out of service. And when the sun comes out, it's all better and your trouble gets flushed. Right. This is a very old copper terminal. It is open and can't be closed because there are too many wires going into it. This terminal should have been replaced. The wires are not attached to the building. The weight of the tree on the cable stretches the wires and they will eventually break. They only stretch so far and then they will snap. This is an example of a tree falling on a cable, stretching the wires. That tree needs to be cut down. And there are fallen trees on cables throughout New York State. It's a public safety and service issue.
We could go on and on. I heard a lot of laughter behind me. I'd just like to ask those who are frontline technicians or retired, how many of you would say that what we've just shown is just a tip of the iceberg of what you see day in and day out? We could hold a whole hearing listening to their stories.
I'm sure we could.
Let me conclude.
Go on. Go on.
Let me conclude my testimony and just reiterate my main points. Competition is not working to bring affordable quality voice, video, and high-speed broadband to all New Yorkers. It's long past time for the PSC to take affirmative action to initiate a formal proceeding on the Connect New York petition. We need the PSC and the legislature to serve the public, not the corporations, and ensure that all New Yorkers are guaranteed the modern 21st century high-quality services they deserve. It's not good enough to get it right for some New Yorkers and allow literally millions of others to be victimized by unregulated market forces. Every New Yorker must be protected. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, regardless of whether the Public Service Commission did a proceeding or not, there's so many different kinds of issues. There's the service quality and the copper deterioration and those kinds of issues. But in relation to what policy you want from the state of New York, you want either the Public Service Commission to force Verizon to do the FiOS build-out statewide, or have if the Public Service Commission won't do it, the legislature should do it. So, is that your position? Is that CWA's position?
CWA's position is twofold. One is we need regulatory oversight and legislative oversight, yes, to ensure that there is an expansion of the FiOS build. So absolutely what you said. And the second piece is until a community benefits from the expansion and the upgrade of its network for an all-fiber network, then we also need regulatory and legislative oversight to ensure that Verizon provides a quality network and quality service.